So hopefully I can look back on myself when I'm 60 and be like, oh, what the day. All right. So I think we're ready to go. So I think, can everybody hear me okay? It's 6:59. We're going to get started. There may be a few more people jumping in. Katie will probably jump in a few minutes. So we'll get started here. I'm going to keep this going on Bible Junkies. I can't see on the other page, on my personal page. So if you make comments on there, I can't necessarily see you. If you're live on another platform, thank you so much. And we're glad you're here. And you can just make some comments. If you have any questions, let us know. Somebody will try to get to you and see it. Tracy, if you see any comments on my page or any other ones, will you let me know or just answer them or something like that? That'd be great. And there'll probably be a few people jumping in. If Katie don't jump in a few minutes, I may make one of you all a co-host, if that's okay. So for all of you all that are super familiar with Zoom.
We're not live on your main page.
It's not live on the my page?
It's not live on your Facebook page, no.
Okay, well, let me try it again. It says it's live streaming, but let me stop it and then I'll try it one more time while everybody's see if there's some people jumping on. I'm going to try it one more time, Tracy.
Okay.
I hope y'all got your boots tight tonight. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a little, just a little.
Oh, here we go.
It's going to hurt. All right, Tracy, is it live now? It should be, hopefully.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. The only thing you're live on is the Bible Junkie study.
Okay. Give it a few minutes. I'm on your page. Okay. So yours is. Okay. All right. We'll just keep it right there and we're going to jump in and get ready to go. There'll be a few people coming in as we get going. Hopefully Katie will be in just a few minutes and she'll be able to help me navigate this thing. So that'll work. It's hard to navigate this and keep my mind rolling right, but there's Miss Ashley. Did you get your laundry done, girl? So Carlos, I'm so glad you're here. Everybody else, I think has been here before. If you're live on any of the other platforms, we're doing our mentorship group live tonight, where we get on Zoom every Monday night. And I'm doing it because we're starting a new series. We just ended a 15-week series on laws of personal growth. So very intentional, on purpose, practical application, and helping us grow in different areas of life and in whatever area everybody wanted to. One that I'm growing in is learning how to do live on Zoom and all these other platforms. So we did it, and we're all getting better about even speaking and communicating. And so what we're going to jump into for the next 12 weeks, we've been at this one, I think, 2 weeks now. And so there's Fernie. Fernie's in. And so I'm going to mute you on that just because of the background noise. But anyway, so we're going to go for the next 12 weeks, probably right at 12 weeks, on communication. And so this week will be the last week that we'll be live on all the different platforms, because this mentorship group is really a private group, and it's intentional and on purpose that way. And I just opened it up just to let some other people know. But the reason is because as we get into some of the lessons, what we'll be doing is actually doing breakout rooms, and we'll be kind of really applying some of this stuff to our life very practically.
Hey, Jill.
Yeah.
Can you send Cheryl a Zoom link?
Yeah, if she'll go live on the Bible Junkies page.
I am.
Yeah, it's on there in the comments. Look at the comments.
All right.
And I'll put it again really quick.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. And so it's a little bit more doing it live on Zoom. The reason we were talking about closing it out to the public is simply because we want everybody in this group to be able to have an opportunity to talk and communicate and apply some of this stuff, because if you can be listening to someone all day long, but if you don't have an opportunity to apply what you're learning, then you're probably not going to learn that much, right? And so the goal is not for this to be like a lecture type style learning or teaching. It's really to have open conversation. Now tonight, because we are kind of live on all these different platforms, I'll be doing a little bit more teaching tonight than I would and what we're going to do in the future. For those of you who were on the last 15 weeks in the mentorship group, I'm going to assign you some of the opportunities to do some of the teaching next week and as we close this thing down. And because we want to create an environment that's safe and you are able to grow and get more comfortable with speaking and teaching, communicating publicly. Now you don't have to. So for those of you who are watching and you've not been a part of this, this is not about public speaking. This is not about group communication. This is about connecting with another human being, whether you're one-on-one, whether you're in a group, or whether you're standing on a stage and you're talking to multiple people in an audience. And so, but because we close the group up, it just gives you a better opportunity to practice some of those skills. So we are going through this particular book. It's a John Maxwell. It's called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And so we're going to really be talking about and digging into connecting. And we'll kind of do a little bit of an introduction to that tonight. We did a little bit last week. We talked about the different communication styles, and I had asked some of you that were on here to really be thinking about what style of communication that that you would find yourself. And I want maybe you to share that in a little bit. So I want you to be thinking about your style of communication. You can get it. You can order this book on Amazon. Some people order it on Thrift Books. I ordered it through Amazon on the used link. And then you can also do Audible. So I listen to each chapter, one chapter a week. And so that helps me. Do y'all hear dogs in the background?
Not anything.
Ashley suggests. So tonight we're going to be talking about 3 different types of communication. One-on-one communication. We're going to be talking about communicating in a group, and then we're going to be talking about speaking publicly in an audience setting. So 80 to 90% of connecting and communication usually happens in a one-on-one conversation, right? And so that's the majority of the time, that's where we're going to be having the most of our conversations. In a group, when you start to get to a place where you're communicating in a group, it's going to take a little bit more of a skill set because you're going to have to do things a little bit differently. So it's the same skill, but it's increased in because you're going to have to use different skills. Have you all ever been a part of a group, like a share group or a mentorship group or I'm trying to think of groups that they have in recovery. You know what I'm talking about? Just those support groups. That's the word I was looking for. And you have someone that dominates the conversation the whole hour, and the leader does not know how to navigate that conversation to move it forward. Just give me a thumbs up or something if you all have ever been a part of that. Okay.
Absolutely.
That is a skill set. To be able to communicate to a group and lead a group, there's a set of skills that you have to be able to still add value to the people, to be able to move it forward without being rude, but make sure that it's happening. It's a skill set that you have to learn to do, or otherwise you're going to be constantly leading groups and you're going to have someone always taking over the conversation, right? And so we're going to talk about that some later in the mentorship. In fact, I'm going to schedule trainings where we're going to practice doing that. We're going to practice learning how to lead small groups and what do you do with someone that overtalks? Even when you've laid out the guidelines, even when you've laid out all the rules. And I've had people where I've even had timers in a group. And I'm like, when the buzzer goes off, you stop talking. And then they're like, they just keep talking. right? And it's just like, hello, the buzzer's louder and louder, like, and they're still talking. So how do you continue to add value to someone, connect with someone when they are not paying attention to everybody else in the room? And so there's skills that you have to be able to navigate that type of stuff. And then the third type of connecting when you're communicating is with an audience. So how do you connect individually with every person in an audience? Odds are you might or might not, but you've got to go into a public setting when you're publicly speaking, and you've got to be able to think, how do I add value to the people in the audience? Well, the first thing you do is get yourself off your mind, because anytime you stand in front of a group to communicate with them, it's not about you. It's about the people in the audience, right? And so anytime that we walk up to a platform, and I'm as guilty as this as anybody, is when we are thinking, what are they going to think of me? Is what I'm going to say going to be good? Am I? So when we start asking all these I questions, we've already reversed the connecting. We've already dismantled the connecting skill, right? It's got to be, who are the people? How can I add value to them? Is what I'm going to say going to benefit the people in the room? Who's the audience? And so those type things, those are different types of skill sets that we'll talk about as we continue to go through and down this path of communicating and connecting. We're definitely not going to get into that tonight, but we are going to talk about a couple of those, and it's mainly going to be one-on-one in a public setting. That's what we're going to mainly be talking about. So, we're going to do some field trips. One of the things that I would love to do during this mentorship is a field trip. And what I would like to do is to get a few of us together. I've even thought about doing it live, like getting some kind of body cam and going on a secret covert mission, and going out and showing you all what I'm talking about when we're talking about connecting with people. Okay. And so there is, when you connect with someone, you are literally slowing down and putting this person first. And so whoever it is that you're going to be talking to. And I'm thinking about a conversation that I had today, and I'm not going to get into it because I would have to tell the backstory to make it make sense. And there was a lady that had a perfect opportunity as me, as the customer, to be able to connect with me to help solve the problem that she gets paid to solve. Right. But yet she didn't slow down long enough to connect with me. And so we'll get into that in a few minutes. But everyone communicates, few connect. Connecting with anyone on the other side of your words is going to require you to change. Period. Now, this is going to hurt, because you're going to say, well, what about the other person? So is there anybody currently in your all's life right now? And you can put it in the comments or just raise your little hand. Is there anybody in your life currently right now that you wish they communicated better? Is there anybody that drives y'all crazy right now? Both hands, feet. Okay. Is there anybody that you wished would change right now? Jessica's like, hello, me. Hello. Okay, so guess what? They're not here. They're not here. And so the odds are they're not going to change. You are. Okay. And it's going to hurt, because they're going to push you past connecting. Like, you're going to want to connect, but it ain't going to be in a godly way, and it's not going to be in a nice connecting kind of way, So, but they're not here. Okay, they're not here. And the odds are is they're not in a mentorship group, or they're not paying money to learn how to connect with you. Okay. And if they're not, the odds are that you're going to have to be the one to train and teach the other person how to communicate with you by modeling that example, right? And oh, it hurts. It hurts so bad. And so, in fact, my family is kind of we're trying to example this to each other, being an example to each other right now, doing this where we are being very intentional about sitting down. We've only been doing this for like 3 days, so don't, think I'm like super wonderful at this. But being very intentional about connecting with each other and asking very intentional questions to each other. This is going to require you to do the changing if you're here seeking growth in the area of connecting is key to every relationship. Being able to connect in a relationship will make you or break you in any relationship. And I'm talking about at the drive-through at McDonald's. I'm talking about the people at the laundromat. I'm talking about the men and women that you are responsible to steward and to lead. I'm talking about your spouse. I'm talking about your friends. I truly believe that connecting is the key to any relationship to making it successful. And leaders, for those of you who are in a leadership position, non-negotiable. I've non-negotiable. You have to learn how to connect with people. If you're going to be in leadership, please, please, please take that serious. There's so many people out there right now that are suffering greatly because they're under the authority and the leadership of people that will not take the time to learn to connect in relationships, and it's directly affecting their lives. And so here's the thing, and we talk about this a little. It talks a little bit about this in the book, but I got kind of stuck here. If we evaluate our communication style right now, how we communicate on a regular basis, the majority of us are going to have a coping communication versus a connecting communication, because the majority of us have never been taught communication skills. We've learned them naturally through coping with life, right? And I'm going to give you some examples, and I want you to be thinking, because I'm going to ask you all to speak into this in just a few minutes. So most people, including myself, but the people that you're communicating with, I want you to get this because it's going to set you free. It's going to set you free, and you're going to stop running on this hamster wheel trying to get people to connect and communicate with you when they are coping and when you are coping. So coping, if you define this word, I looked it up and it says a method of communication that someone uses when they are stressed. So that is the teacher, of the majority of us, right? That's been the teacher. So here's some examples of coping communication versus connecting. Coping communication is defensive or dismissive. Y'all know anybody that is, when you talk to them, they're just naturally dismissive or defensive? Okay. That's a coping type of communication. People that are aggressive, harsh, they have an elevated tone. That's coping communication. Okay. Can you see the difference already in when connecting with someone? It's even the tone of our voice. Passive aggressive communication, it's defined as an inward negative emotion, but you outwardly express an agreeable eye roll, sarcasm, procrastination. That could be coping communication, avoiding or deflecting to someone else. This is the number one thing that you'll see with people that are struggling with their coping communication. They're coping in their verbiage versus connecting, especially in a support group. When you're talking about and you ask a question and you say, okay, so tell me, about your situation. And they always bring up another person. So they say, well, my husband or my sister, or so instantly, if you as a leader, as you continue to develop skills of communication, you'll begin to hear these type of coping communications in other people's language. And what you'll be able to do is redirect them back to themselves to make them feel their feelings or make them actually listen, do what you're needing. You'll help guide them into what your purpose is. Like if you're in a support group, instead of deflecting, you'll say, hey, let's bring that back around to you. So what about you? How are you feeling about that? It has nothing to do with your brother or your mother or your father. So deflecting, that's something that comes with skill to be able to recognize and then to try to guide someone back. People that cope with communication instead of connect, they'll blame shift. They'll always shift fault to something, unable to accept any responsibility. Stonewalling, that's a form of coping communication. Stonewalling means that we leave other people feeling unheard. And so that's a type of coping communication versus connecting communication. Refusing to engage. Have y'all ever had a conversation with someone and they refuse to engage in the conversation with you? That's stonewalling. That's called coping communication instead of connecting. Interrupting. This is probably one I'm more guilty of than anything. I think Cheryl, I think we talked about it one time. Interrupting, cutting others off mid-sentence, disrupting the flow of communication. That is a type of coping communication because it's a learned skill. We've learned to do that. Misinterpretation, jumping to conclusions, misreading cues, ruminating, dwelling on past conflicts or issues. Someone that you talk to, they live and they communicate in the past. They don't forward think. They don't forward communicate. They communicate based on, well, in the past, or well, I have always done, or well, this is the way we've always done it, or this is what I've done. This is, there's always a past tense in their verbiage. If y'all ever remember, does that ring a bell with anybody you've ever talked to? Lashing out, verbal attacks, snapping at someone. And here's a big one, unfocused communication. How many of you all are guilty of, or you have done it, or you've been sitting on the other side when you're trying to have a conversation with someone and their phone rings and they actually answer it while you're talking? That is a learned skill. That's a skill that is learned because of the culture. It's so acceptable for us to be interrupted 5,000 times a day that when there's nothing worse than being heartbroken or having some type of issue going on and you're trying to share that with someone and they're looking at their phone and they'll say, "Go ahead, I'm listening." And I always stop and I'm like, "No, I'm good. When you're done, we'll carry on." And I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm not going, you know what I mean? It's something we've got to really work on. And I'm guilty of it on this side of it too, like doing it myself. I'm just saying, like, this is a skill that is worth working on, is honoring and valuing another person long enough to be able to hear them and not being able to interrupt. Jessica said, I was trying to pull this chat up so I could hear it. I wouldn't call it a skill. I'd call it learned, but yes, that's right. It's a learned behavior. It is. And
Because
these
I would say skill would
Mhm.
be to learn how not to do it, but the habit is the
Yeah.
negative side to it.
Yeah, that's right. Anything
Otherwise,
that
I'm
we
really
do.
feeling
Mhm.
bad habits.
Yes. Well, we all are. And that's why we're here, is because unless we talk about it, unless we can sit and say, these are some things I struggle with. I've done every one of these, and the reason I know how to write it down on a piece of paper is because I'm familiar with them, right? Anything that we do it because we've got experience in it. Anything that I believe that we continuously do as a habit does become a skill, and that's how we operate. And so we've got to be able to reverse that, like she said, and learn how to kind of just not do it. There's nothing more important than the person sitting in front of you. If connecting is important, if it's not important, then this is not going to matter to begin with. So people that communicate with an exaggerated importance of themselves, they constantly reflect the conversation back to their own personal achievements, always one up. Like you've heard people that in their conversation and communication, they're always one up in anything that anybody says. Using me and I statements when they should be listening. So, and I try to make sure that when I'm having a conversation with someone, instead of trying to, if I'm really genuinely wanting to understand that person and I want to connect with them, it's instinctive for me to say, I understand because I have been through this, instead of saying, wow, that must have been hard for you. right? Instead of keeping the conversation focused on the person that's actually going through the experience versus me bringing in my experiences all the time. There's a time and a place for it, but I try to catch myself because I will do that. And I will try to say, well, I would do this instead of learning. Good leaders, good communicators know how to ask good questions. And so that's a way to it's a skill that you can be learned. Lack of empathy, manipulating events, feelings, memories to redirect or deflect. That's a type of communication that people have gotten. I believe it's more coping instead of connecting. Coping really is the average communication. And I don't know if you all agree or disagree, but I believe that the majority of people have learned to communicate by just happenstance. Like it's just happened. Like we just learned how to communicate, and we've learned to communicate because we've had to learn to cope with things. And so we do it through survival. We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to get you before you get me. It's all about me. We live in a culture where it's all about me. And so therefore I need you to listen to me. Social media is really the same way. I mean, our whole profiles, everything we do is customized to our music, our playlist, our TV, everything we do is customized to our own wants and desires, right? So why would we not do that in communication too? So the solution to connecting with someone is not talking more. It's actually just the opposite. So, how does talking less allow you to connect with someone? And y'all can put some of this stuff in the comments if you've, um, but how do you all think that talking less, and you add it to the comments, and then we're going to open up for conversation in just a few minutes. How does talking less allow you to connect with someone? And I've got this story down here about a conversation I had today. But I want you all to be thinking as you go out into town. I want you to be thinking about some practical just everyday mundane things that you do, whether it's at work, but not necessarily at work. If you go to the store, if you're going to the store, if you're going to buy something, does people stop and ask you, hey, how are you doing? What is it I can help you with? Do they connect with you before they try to sell you something? And I'm going to go a little bit more in this direction as far as the workplace with this for tonight. And then we can open it up. But to be effective in any area of life, we must learn to connect. Think about this. When you are receiving a service, is the person connecting with you or are they coping? Coping is a learned behavior. It's a learned skill or learned behavior, a habit that it's just I'm thinking about like customer service. I was in a store the other day where everything's built based on sales. If I go into a business and its revenue is generated strictly by someone selling you something, and you're in the store for an hour and nobody speaks to you, what do you think their sales numbers are? Right. So I'm thinking I've done lost focus on shopping at this point. I've done fixed their entire operation in my mind, right? Like I've done went into work mode. I'm trying to shop. I can't shop because I'm like, y'all are not talking to nobody. And I know you're on commission. You ain't making no money. You're depressed and look like you're gonna die over there. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And so if when you go in, for those of you who are in sales, Ashley, you wait tables. Do you walk up to a table instantly and be like, "What do y'all want to drink?" Do you do that?
No, I ask them how they're doing
Yeah.
first.
And
Hello.
yeah, and do you compliment or have conversation and
Yeah.
yeah. So if somebody walks into your house at your door, do you just open the door and be like, "What do you want to drink?" I mean, no, you're
No.
gonna be like, "Hey, how are you? How are y'all doing?
I
Come on
wish I
in."
you.
Yeah, I love your hat. Oh my gosh, girl, you look good. I love that shirt, Carlos. Like, you're going to connect, right? But the problem is we just go through life and we don't do that. We don't slow down enough to connect with another human being that's in our path. And so to be effective in any area, I believe that the number one, the key element to promotion, to successful relationships is this first step. I taught customer service sales for 20 years with Harley Davidson and even some before that. But for 20 years, I taught people how to connect with people in order to go to the next phase of a sales process, right? It was all about communication. You know what the number one rule of thumb is in connecting? And I'm talking about and it could be, you could use this in any relationship, no matter who the other human being is number one rule: do not talk about business. Period. I don't care if you're talking to and I'll have it a habit, if Brian will come in, he'll be working all day. And if the toilet lid is to pinch my leg off the other day, just be real here, you know? So as soon as he walks in the door, I want to be like, excuse me, but I like to took my leg off on the toilet lid. Could you get it fixed? Right? Is that connecting to my husband after he's worked all day? No. Hey, how are you doing? But I have to stop even today when he comes in, because I've been over here and I got behind because of these crazy people that were trying to get into my computer. And so I'm over here and I'm in the book. He comes over to try to tell me something, and I do not want to look up. I really do not want to pay attention to him. That's just being real. In that moment, I just did not. I'm focused. I need to work because I'm at home and it's hard to work at home. And I could feel this lesson coming up in me. And I was like, ah. And so I did this to my book. So if this is on my desk, I'm like, and my internal communication, me and me are talking, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to stop working. And I was like, hi, how are you? That was intentional. It hurt me type of connection. It hurt me. Because I didn't want to, but because I'm reading this stuff, you have to be accountable, right? You have to do what you are reading. And so you all are responsible now to do the same thing. So the number one step to increase sales, to increase relationships, to increase in anything is to stop and slow down and connect with someone. Because I could have told Brian as soon as he come in, I could have said something about a chore that needed to be done, and it would have been legitimate. But at the same time, I have to on purpose be able to connect. Excellent leaders, hands down, are excellent connectors. I can be great at my job, the skill, but if I cannot connect, I should not be leading if I do not know how to slow down and connect with people. Case studies, the presidents of the United States. So do we want to talk about connecting and communication? So you can, as you start thinking and you become more skilled at communication, you'll start paying a little bit more attention on how other people communicate. So here I've skipped over my notes. So how do we do this? And Ashley said it. I'm going to go through a couple of these. I want y'all to get ready because I want you to spend a few minutes and having some conversation with me. I want you this week, you've got a homework assignment. If you don't go on a field trip with me at some point, which I'd love to do, but if you don't go on a field trip with me, I want you to do this and I want you to come back and let us know. I want you to go to some places very intentionally, and I want you to evaluate the connecting. So if you're at the Kroger, for instance, and you're walking up and you're checking out your groceries and they are not going to speak to you, right? So they're just doing their job and you're looking at them, and I do this a lot just because I love people and I just want them to enjoy life. And so they'll just be miserably doing their job. And so I'm like, how are you today? And they're just shocked, and I'm like, are you having a good day? And they're like, yeah, yeah, it's time to get off work. And then they start telling you about how soon they wish their job was over. And so it just starting to bring up conversation with people on purpose. But you're going to have to do that in the culture that we live in today. You're going to have to practice connecting. So maybe you go out this week on a field trip and you're just in the grocery store or you're at McDonald's. Make yourself ask people, how are you today? Genuinely, how are you today? And I'm telling you, it will change the course of your day. especially if you're not used to doing that. Ashley, being in the type of service that you're in, it's probably a lot more natural for you to do it because you'll train yourself to have those conversations. But that's your all's assignment this week. So this week, pay attention to connecting. Are you connecting? Are you slowing down when someone in your personal space? Carlos, you're about to get married. You better get this. You better get the whole connecting thing, right? He's like, I'm taking notes. And so learning to being able to connect with the spouse, especially after you've, been together for a long period of time, because that's the person we take the most advantage of, right? So the how-tos here, first thing you have to do is you have to desire to connect with people. If you don't like people in general and you could care less about their day, just don't ask them. Just stay unconnected, right? Because it's going to come across as fake, and so just don't even do it. But if you desire, you got to first desire to connect with people, but then you got to be able to actually practice it. So you have to desire, you have to understand how important that it's important. You're not just doing it. You have to understand that has some importance and has some weight. You got to be committed to developing the skill and practice. The most skilled people don't get promoted at jobs unless there's just a dead void and they need somebody that's breathing, and you don't want to work there anyway. Relationships. If you're going into, I always say this in an interview, if I'm going into an interview or I'm going to meet with someone and I'm going to be working with them side by side, I'm going to pay attention to how they communicate with me in a setting where they're really focused. Because if they're not focused in a setting where they are intentionally being focused, when they get used to you, guess what's going to happen? It's just going to get worse, right? So if I go into, let's say, an interview, or I'm going to be partnering in a ministry or working with someone, especially if they're going to have authority over me or they're going to lead me, and I go in and they are, first thing, they're talking to me, but yet they're on their phone. Guess what's going to happen 6 months down the road? It's only going to get worse, right? So you got to pay attention. The better you get at communicating, the better you're going to be able to evaluate the situations in your life and keep yourself from situations that are only going to escalate if someone is not intentionally practicing and developing communication skills. So relationships, or the lack of, if you are a person that lacks a lot of relationships, it could be your inability to connect. If you're not getting promoted at a job, but yet your skill set is off the charts, it could be your lack of connecting with someone. If you are an outsider on a team, always, there could be some type of connecting issue. Practical application, focus on the other person when you're having a conversation. Expand your vocabulary beyond words. You've got to be able to expand your vocabulary. What does that mean? Y'all put it in the comments. What do you think that means? What do you think it means to expand your vocabulary beyond just words? And then here's the key: practice. Any new skill that you're going to try to learn, and communication is a skill that you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to intentionally do it. You're going to have to go out and you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to go in here and I'm going to see if I can connect with a person today. Or I'm going to, like today, I had to intentionally close my book. Brian would have just went on. He wouldn't have paid any attention to me if I would have just kept on working. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But because this was fresh in my spirit, I wanted to practice. And so I closed my book and looked up, looked him eye to eye, and had a conversation. And it wasn't natural for me. It was not. It was something I had to choose to do. So put down the phone, shut the book, stop, make eye contact, find common ground, keep communication simple, be authentic, be real, be human. Have y'all ever talked to someone and they're talking to you and you feel like that you don't even know what world you're in because they're so fake? Have y'all ever talked to somebody like that? And they are genuinely acting like they're concerned or they're into the conversation, but you just know that they're not. That is such an odd conversation to have. But anyway, be authentic, be real, be human, talk less about yourself, ask about another person. You want to connect with someone, just ask them about their day, ask them about their self, compliment them, find something don't lie, but compliment them about something. Ask a question, and you'll be surprised at what the difference you can make. Never start a conversation without asking, how are you today? Whether you're at the store, the doctor, work, at home, never leave a conversation. You want to become the most valuable person at your job. Make sure that you're asking the people around you, is there anything I can do for you before I leave today? I'm going to be leaving. Is there anything I can do for you? That is going to make you one of the most valuable people there. And so that's about it on my notes. That's all I got. That's a lot. But I want to open up the conversation to you all and just give me some of your thoughts about the differences in your communication style. Do you feel like and I want you to be honest, and this is live, so just so you know, so don't say anything that you wouldn't feel comfortable saying publicly. Tell me about your communication style. Do you naturally cope or do you connect? So I'm gonna wait on you all, somebody to speak up, and then I'll call
I'm
on
a mixture, Jill.
Yeah.
I recognize some coping skills as you were listing things tonight,
Yes.
but I do try to connect. I probably need to be more intentional about that, but like
Yes.
you tonight, where you had to stop and make yourself do something out of your comfort zone, or what you had going on. You had to stop and
Yeah.
recognize that you needed to do something else. And so I'm bad about, I'm doing this right now, so I don't want to stop.
And sometimes it does have to
I'm-
be that way, but being able to decipher when there's an opportunity to connect that's important and when someone's just being like a fly, you know what I mean? There's a difference, but
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like I'm probably snap sometimes when
Yeah.
I'm not wanting to stop what I'm focused on and
Mm,
redirect. So
yes.
okay,
That's-
so that's me.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Miss Cheryl.
Yes, ma'am.
I love it. So somebody else give me
So
some
I'm gonna
thoughts.
go ahead and jump in.
Yes.
I'm like Cheryl, I'm a little bit of both too, because here lately, I feels like, you sometimes feel like maybe you beat your head against the wall. Carlos can probably understand where I'm at on this, but there's times that if you're not looking at me in the eye, but yet you want my full attention, it's aggravating to me, because you're sitting there and you're inserting this conversation that you feel I need to have with you right then and right there, as I'm coming in with a million things on my mind, but yet you won't look me in the eye, and then you get mad at me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there's that. And then also, I'm pretty good at connecting with people.
Mhm.
I feel like I'm getting better anyhow at it, for sure, through teaching and then on here. But I see where you're talking with these coping, this right here. I mean, I can see how I used to be and how I am now are totally two different people.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
And sometimes we
So that was
do,
really good.
especially in your situation, we train people how to treat us. We train people how to communicate with us sometimes, and especially in a leadership role, being intentional about teaching communication skills, especially where you're at, because you got people coming in that have done nothing but communicated by coping their whole life, probably never even
Mhm.
heard that you can develop a skill of communication and may not even know what communication is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think for you all being in the situations, maybe creating an environment where you're intentionally teaching communication. So, you taking what you're learning in the mentorship group and teaching it.
Yes,
You know?
ma'am, I have been.
Yeah,
I'm very
that's
grateful
what this
and
stuff's
thankful for
about.
this.
Yeah. because people don't know to communicate if we don't, especially if we have a role of leadership. But we teach people, I believe, very much how to treat us.
Mhm.
So in some situations, not all, because it's not all black and white. But thank you for sharing that. That was
Well,
good.
Jill,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, there you are. Carlos.
All right. So, okay. So first I want to ask you, how was your day and how are you doing?
Oh, look, he was listening. Yes, he did good. He took notes. I'm doing great, Carlos. Thank you.
Suck up.
and that's,
Katie said,
you know,
"Suck up."
so you can call me a suck up or you can call me a active listener.
That's right. A
one
good
thing-
student.
One thing that I've learned as a counselor is that your counseling is about 80% listening and
Mhm.
20% talking. And when you guys were talking about when you were talking about when somebody is trying to tell you about their day,
Mhm.
if you stop and you ask somebody, "Hey, how's your day doing?" But then as soon as they start talking, you start texting. I absolutely loathe that. And one thing that I'm learning to do is to put my phone on do not disturb,
Yeah.
because my words say that, hey, how are you doing? But my actions are showing you that I'm not here. My shell's here, but I'm busy having like 45 different
Yeah.
conversations. Maryville campus, there's 75 men here on campus right now.
Mm.
And to be intentional, to give you my full attention, I make sure to lock the gym door. And just in case somebody pops that door because they are determined to come and work out, I put a sign on my door, do not disturb.
Yeah.
Because it just shows you that you care if you actually just sit there and listen.
That's right.
That's important.
Yeah, that is so good.
So yeah, and that's something that I am working on, especially as I am stepping into a new stepping into marriage. I like to glean a lot from different husbands I watch. Are you listening to your wife or are you just trying to talk over her? Don't one up one person.
Mhm.
Actually listen to them. And don't have your phone out when you're on a date. That's just rude.
Yeah.
Date your wife.
Yes.
Even after you get married, I'm gonna continue dating Lacey.
That's right.
Hey, I got your invite today too, Carlos.
Yes, the
Amen.
wedding. The wedding. I
Got
love
the
it.
wedding invite today.
Carlos, I was thinking when you were talking, we are in such a culture where we are trained to be available 24/7. And I think we've got to kind of reverse that and train ourselves to be unavailable. And so my phone stays on do not disturb the majority of the time. And that is a practice that I intend on keeping. I learned this many years ago with in management. And when you have hundreds of employees and you have to be available, you have to train them to teach you, or you have to train them on how to treat you. They have to get used to the fact that you have hours, that you are available, because otherwise you can't give yourself to everyone. And so the first thing I do when I'm working in a leadership environment and training in that area is I show them that button on their phone. We get their phone and I'm like, I want to show you here's a really good secret. You've got to be able to turn off, in order to be the best and to be able to even be there for yourself, for your family or whatever. So I think that's good that you are intentional about doing that. And I'm sure people's lives are changed just because of that. Really. I'm sure people feel heard. And so therefore that creates healing when people are heard. So that's good.
Amen.
I love it.
Amen.
All right. Who else wants to share about coping versus communication or anything else, anything that you feel like that you got on your mind?
So
I'll share.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Who's going?
Jessica.
Am I going?
Oh, I think, was you off or Haley?
It doesn't matter. She can go first if she wants. I was unmuted, but I'll let her, whoever just spoke, go before
Okay.
me since they picked.
Go ahead, Miss Haley.
I was gonna say, I think for me,
and just the way I am, I have like an 80% connecting, but then I have that 20% of me that probably uses coping with certain people or in certain situations. And I recognize that in myself, especially if I'm focused, if I'm trying to focus on something like this class and I feel like I'm being interrupted when I'm trying to focus,
Yeah.
I tend to get snappy. So I notice that in myself because I'm trying to intentionally do something, or with certain people,
Yeah.
I think I have the tendency of kind of being unfocused when I probably should be focused.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking I probably am more people that are highly driven and people that get stuff done, like high D personalities, choleric personalities, very driven, people that are very driven. I would have this is an area that I have to be intentional on. It doesn't come natural for me, really, to connect because I'm very task oriented. And so it's a skill that I have to practice or else I just won't do it. And I'm sure all of y'all have probably seen that in me if you've been around me a minute. Is I have to be intentional on connecting because it's not just something that comes natural at all to me. It just really doesn't, if I'm being honest. Because and I don't mean to be selfish, but I'm just very task driven and I want to, and my goal is the end result. And so if I'm not careful, I can run over people to get to that. And so this has to be something I practice or else I won't do it. So that's good that you can see that in yourself, Haley, because it's really being able to identify our behaviors. We're not going to change anything until we identify our current behavior and what we do. And so even when I'm in a situation where I don't really care how the other person's doing, and I can feel the Holy Spirit say, you need to focus right now on this other human being. And then I can shift from, okay, I got this task to this person. There's a human being that I genuinely do care about people. But I do have to hear the Holy Spirit or else I don't do well. So I'm glad that you recognize that about yourself, girl. And you are a good connector. You really are. I've always seen that about you. You have a really genuinely good, kind heart and care about people. So I love it. All right,
Well,
who's
thank
next?
you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll go next.
All right, Miss Jessica, can we see your face, your beautiful face? Or no?
Sure.
There
Hi.
she is.
So
I like your
I
top.
do what?
I like your top.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel like I'm a great connector, but I also see a lot of these coping things flowing throughout it.
Yes.
I can read people, so I know, like, sometimes when I read the room as well. So I can tell when someone doesn't understand or someone feels unheard. But I'm really bad about interrupting. If I don't say things like I'm thinking, I get them. So I struggle with that too. Some of that's my ADHD, but even with the struggles that we have, the disabilities, whatever you want to call it, you still have to learn how to manage that and being self-aware. So I'm extremely self-aware now, so it's painful. But I am really bad about in a conversation, especially if I'm passionate about something or excited.
Yes.
And it's not that I value that other person or what they're saying, but I am quick to respond and I am really trying hard. It's definitely a struggle.
Yeah,
I
I've
will be
seen you
honest.
do it. I've watched you practice that in conversations that you and I have. I've watched you because we talk about things that you're passionate about. Our conversations are the core, most of the time, the core of your passion. And so I'll be saying something and I can watch you do it. You're like, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's painful. It's painful because I am very bad at it. I am terrible.
Well, I don't think you're terrible. I think you are, you're practicing it and you're aware of it. And so I've watched you I've watched you pull it in because you're
Yeah.
paying attention. I've watched it.
I'll tell you
Yeah.
that there's someone, a coworker that has been like sandpaper for me. And it was interesting because when this person shifted into the role that they're in, it placed them over me. Although I feel like our relationship has grown tremendously, but there was a struggle in the beginning, on both ends. There was just
Yeah.
a struggle. And I am really big because I think it's important that when you see someone else, even if you struggle with that person or that personality, when you see that they are actually putting effort into you or the situation, to acknowledge it. So I'm always trying to acknowledge it, even when there's times
Yeah.
I want to choke the person.
Hey, we got to keep it real. I know. I get it.
Yeah. And I'm just being honest, but it has helped, I think, both of us. But I have went to this person and said, you know what? I have been very challenged with you. And I know this is going to sound strange. And that's exact words I used to this person because they thought I was going to say something negative.
Right.
And I said, but it has really helped me to grow as a person. And it has.
Yeah.
And this person's always calling me out on interrupting. Always.
Yeah.
And in sometimes ways that are, I feel offended
Yeah.
because of how they do it and what they say. But it has caused me to be more aware of it and actually intentional on not doing it.
That's so good.
So yeah, so the person that I'm challenged with the most has actually helped me grow the most.
Yes. That is the way it should be right there. Because you're choosing to take that and use it for your good versus because you could resort back to coping communication, which would be to the lady I talked to on the phone today when she was being very sarcastic with me when she had an opportunity to connect with me and to help me because I'm the customer and she's the employee. Like, you're getting paid to help me and I need you to help me because I'm like struggling. And so her communication style, it caused a reaction in mine, which is just an
Yeah,
area of growth. Yeah. It
Mhm.
shows me.
And that's honestly what this personality does with me. It triggers me a lot because sometimes, but I will tell you from where we were in the beginning, which really was just a few months ago, if you're really thinking about reality, maybe October, whatever, however long that is. But even this person has really changed on how they communicate with me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because they learned real quick. I don't do really well with you being rude to me or talking down to me or treating me like a child. Those are three things I just don't do very well with. So I feel like they put a lot of effort into how they communicate with me. So I'm really trying to put a lot of effort in how they
do
prefer.
you think that because you are openly communicating, you're teaching her how to communicate with you and it's working because you're not just internalizing and shoving down. You're saying, hey, let's have this conversation because you're comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. It's teaching her how to treat you and you're training her in a respectful way.
I do think yes to that partly, but also that person likes to have a conversation. Like they do want to communicate. Okay, if this isn't working, let's talk about
that's
this.
good. Yeah.
So they don't really prefer to stuff it down either. I just think that we both have very strong personalities, and we're both women. And I do think that with them being into this new role that they were stepping into, they wanted to feel like they had that leadership role.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You have to establish that
and be respected in that role. And I think that I think I've mentioned this before. There's a time and place where you just need to take the back seat for the sake of the other person.
That's right.
And sometimes pride has to get out of the way in order for you to do that. And that was very humbling for me. I don't have to have the front seat, and I really don't. My big thing in communication is I don't have to be right. I just want to understand.
Yeah. A
And
lot
if
of
I can
people, I think
understand,
that
I
way.
can navigate
Mm,
through it. But I
yeah.
will tell you, the Lord has told me before in the past, it's going to sound funny, but I really wanted to understand a certain situation. And he said, you don't get to understand. And I was mad at God. I was offended at God.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? Because I was being wrongly mistreated in a situation forever ago. And because in that moment, he told me I don't always get to understand and I didn't
Yeah.
deserve the right. It's because I was in the flesh. And when I gave up, it took me a while. When I gave up caring about it,
It
he came
changed.
back to me and said, now I will give you spiritual understanding.
Yeah. Give you the answer.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I think it's been a humbling experience. And I think that, I think the person who rubs you the hardest is the one that's going to teach you the most if you allow it.
Absolutely.
And that is where I'm at.
Katie, did you hear that? Just saying, not to call nobody out, but that's just what we do in here. I mean, we got to keep it real, but that's so true. I do believe that we have to be able to determine what the Lord is doing in our lives as believers with people that rub us the wrong way. Ouch.
Well, if he can trust us with that person, how's he going to trust us in a much bigger scale? Because let me
That's right.
tell you, anytime you're doing something from the Lord, you're going to deal with a lot of personalities that are not actually for you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's all I got.
Amen. So I just wanted to jump in here real quick. With the Lord telling you that you don't get to understand, I've been dealing with that for the past like year, 2 years, and the scripture that just I've read it 100 times, if not 1,000. Proverbs 3, 5, 6, 7. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. That first part of scripture is to trust in the Lord, doesn't say understand in the Lord. Because like as a parent, like, I'm not a parent. Cadence is my daughter. She's not my blood daughter, but I will never use the word stepdaughter. But that's my little girl.
Yeah.
Whenever she holds my hand and I walk with her, I don't sit there and I explain to her step by step what we're going to do. I just put my hand down. She grabs it. She just walks with me.
That's right.
And I need to be like that with the Lord because God knows where he's going. The Lord knows where he is going. And when I get to that resting place, then you'll stop and you'll look and like, oh, okay, now all this makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of different personalities, and I'm not going to say coworkers, but I just did. Some are spiritual sandpaper.
Yeah.
My mom told me this when I was a little boy, that the buttholes in your life is God's spiritual sandpaper.
Yeah.
And it's actually refining you because like when you're dealing with a wood project, if you pick it up, it's all put together, pieces are there, but you can't really enjoy it because it's got a lot of rough edges. And I'm a work in progress, and I know I'm like a sandblaster to some people. I promise you that, because dealing with people in recovery, coming out of the prison system, coming out of if a person has ever stuck a needle in their arm, I guarantee you that they're not some type of a mental giant conversationalist in the beginning. It's just a knee jerk, feed my flesh reaction. But as they get that poison out of them and they start to heal, then it's a lot easier to have a conversation. But it feels like I'm in adult daycare sometimes. That's exactly what it feels like.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I never thought I'd do that.
A lot of leadership roles are that is the core of leadership is helping adults develop behaviors, and it's harder because of the communication skills have come from coping. And so it's like those survival skills have taught us how to communicate. And communication really, I believe, is the underlying answer to all problems. If we can learn to better communicate, then we can 99% of the time work out the issue, even when it comes to all of this, even when you're dealing with someone that has like a mental illness. And if you learn, I believe this, if you learn your skills and your communication skills, if you have a higher skill set, you're able to get yourself out of the way and evaluate this person, understand them for who they are, you know, it's like dealing with a full-fledged narcissist, right? If you understand that this is a mental illness and you understand that nothing you do is going to change, then you're able to identify that. Therefore, you adjust your communication and it stops you from stressing out so bad. It's like a person in recovery or a drug addict. I tell people all the time, if a blind man trips over you, are you going to get mad and just lose your mind? No, you're not, because they're blind, because you have enough skill set to see that. So you're not going to get stressed out. You're like, oh, well, they're blind. So them tripping on me is, so if someone's lost in drug addiction, I'm not going to get stressed out about their behaviors all the time. They got brain damage in that season of their life.
That is so good.
So the same thing with communication. The better I get in developing my skill, the better I'm able to identify someone else's skill level. Therefore, I'm not going to get tore up about the fact that they can't communicate well. They're talking at their skills level, if that makes sense. Like it's the
Going
same
back
thing.
Jill, just to add to what you're
Yeah.
saying, kind of going to ACEs, you know, adverse childhood experiences, what happens to someone who deals with trauma and even drugs, their executive function does not work the same as someone who grew up in a healthy environment. And you have to help them find a way to help reprogram and rewire the brain. Because what happens, I mean, I am a prime example. My ACEs score is an 8, the highest is a 10. I'm thankful that I had a granny, a praying grandmother-in-law that helped me. But emotional intelligence, I know it sounds funny, but everyone doesn't have it.
That's
and
right.
A lot of it is due to the executive function part of the brain. And when you're always in survival mode,
yes,
that is how you learn to function. And that's why a lot of these coping things are very normal for me in communication, because I was in survival mode most of my life.
that's
you
right.
know, as a child and even as a young adult. So I've had to train myself. And that was really me taking a lot of trainings and classes and,
That's right.
you know, working with people. But I still see that show up in certain circumstances. So I'm constantly always trying to improve that part of my
that's
brain.
Right.
So
I
when
agree.
he's like talking about, when Carlos is talking about adult daycare, it's funny, but again, a lot of them do not have the emotional intelligence and the executive function.
Yeah.
I know that when I took Leadership Blunt, one of the things that we do in the very beginning of Leadership Blunt is it's called Bridges to Poverty. And I remember we do these simulations, and it's kind of funny because I had to pretend to be a 16-year-old girl pregnant. Well, I was a 16-year-old girl pregnant, so that was a very easy task for me.
Yes.
Just reliving my life, you know. But just hearing some of the responses of people that will never know what it's like to live in poverty and in those experiences, I actually found it very offensive. Because they thought it's just so easy to make these decisions. It is easy for people who are able to make those decisions, but when you're daily just learning how to survive the day,
That's so good.
you can't focus on that. You can't. The truth, your brain is just figuring out, how am I going to make it through this day?
Yep.
And I mean, and not even just that. Let's say people that have had really great quality of life, and now they dealt with grief, a death, something, because I'm dealing with that in this season that I'm in. It's hard.
Absolutely.
To get past some of those layers to function normal, what we would call normal, you know, making healthy decisions, being able to do activities that you would normally do. Their brains are not there.
Yeah.
And so you have to help them. And there are, Carlos, there's free training for ACEs. They will actually come in, and I think True Purpose has actually done the training, but don't take me up on that. But they'll actually come in and do the training for you guys, and then tell you the next steps and how to help those that have had high ACEs scores.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to, I'd like to do that. And I want to circle back to the analogy that you used about the blind person, Miss Jill, that if I was walking, if I tripped to a person who was blind, I wouldn't get mad at them. And in all actuality, if I go a little bit further, I would actually apologize to them, because I can see that person, they're sitting there and they're blind. They can't see anything.
That's right.
I would try and be like, oh, hey, you know, I'm so sorry. I should have seen that. And then that opens up a dialogue where now you can kind of relate. You can you can apologize to that person. I'm actually going to use that as you just gave me a sermon idea. And
Yeah. Well, you just helped me to
I'm
add to
just
my,
jotting it all down.
yes, make it
Just jot
happen.
it all down.
Make it happen. I was thinking when you said that too, and it is so and it really boils back down to us slowing down and connecting, reversing this conversation. If there's another person on the other side of our words, written or spoken, it's about that person. And it's so hard. And I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm just saying that it's about the person on the other side if we want to be a person of influence in every relationship we're in. And so I love that you said we should apologize. That does take it deeper when you're dealing with someone. If I can get as good in communication as I can, if I can be sitting in a restaurant and tell you if somebody's high because I've had that much experience in that world, I wished I could just that instinctively have a 5-minute conversation with someone and be able to evaluate their communication skill. I'm not talking about because they can use words good. I'm talking about, Jessica, emotional intelligence, like true emotional intelligence, to get that good so that I can I can operate in more self-control in my conversations. Does that make sense? Like I can control the conversation because I understand that the man is blind. I can see it that clearly. And I'm talking about in communication. If we could just get that good, and that's what we're doing. That's what this whole thing is about. If we could get leaders to focus on leading, if we could get people that talk to focus on communication,
Listening.
yeah, and all those things. If we would just focus on growth, y'all, like, oh my gosh, it's and Jessica, I know, and I know all y'all, every one of you, Tracy, Katie, everybody's putting in the work, like putting in the work for personal growth. But there should be we should be inundated with groups like this. Everywhere we turn, there should be groups where you can jump in and practice skills of all different types, I believe. But that's just because it's helped me so much over the years. But anyway, all right, who else hasn't spoke? What time we got? It's 8:11. We got about probably maybe 5-10 more minutes.
I'm
So
gonna jump in, and it's funny because like a lot of the things that Carlos and Jessica and Tracy and Cheryl said is really true, but I take it a step further because to me, I pulled myself, you know, obviously God gave me the opportunities, but like when I look at people
mhm.
and all they do is complain about stuff, like I'm just like, come on, like you just got to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm willing to do it with them, but I'll interrupt them because I don't think they're moving fast enough, or I think I know a better way.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I was so quiet for so long, and you know,
Yeah.
it's just taking the business world into the Christian realm, you know,
Mhm.
because I was taught it was not okay to be quiet. I had to fight for everything that I had. And
Mhm.
so I turned from quiet, people loving to really like not slowing down because I was so overwhelmed with all the tasks they gave me, plus trying to be everybody's
Mhm.
like therapist at work. And so it just got to be so like now I'm just like the quieter the better. But I do go to the grocery store, and I do it if I go inside, because 9 times out of 10 I just do a click list. I talk to them, you know, I find something to talk to them about. I have one guy, and I always forget his name till I see him, but he and I strike up a conversation, and he was telling me how he was a teacher overseas. And
Yeah.
when he immigrated here, he wants to get back into teaching. And I was like, go for it. And I'm like
Yes.
telling him all these things because my friends are doing it, and
Yeah.
they're, you know, in their early to late 30s. And I'm like, just go for it. Like, I don't know why you're procrastinating. And so I'm like you, Jill, like when I went to Disney and Universal before they got really crazy, Like I was literally, I couldn't enjoy it because I worked at Dollywood. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, well, let's see, how are they doing this? And in my mind,
Yeah.
I'm like telling them, like all my kids and Joe, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, and comparing, and they're looking at me like, okay. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't help. Like,
It's the operations side of you. Yeah.
yeah. And
You
so,
do have a great
I
way of
mean,
communicating.
I'm
You really
sorry.
do. You have a great way of communicating, and it's like the pendulum thing is a lot of times when we have lived so far on one side, there's always going to be the pendulum swing where we've got to go extreme to the other side just in order
Yeah.
to come back and find the balance, and I think you're in that space of coming back and now and being able to navigate both worlds, forced to be really quiet. You've been like, let me show you my voice and watch me roar, to the point of now where you're learning that the pendulum is coming back to the center, and it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to see, really, and you've made it through it, and God's put you in the perfect environment to cultivate that. And he's put some sandpaper around you, and they're still around you, and they're still going to continue to sandpaper you, and God's going to keep you there until it doesn't sandpaper you no more.
Yeah. I have to tell you a quick story. So she has left me alone quite a bit. But she emailed me, and I was trying to get rid of some stuff because she has a store that we can usually push some close dated product through. And she said, well, did you do this? And I said, no, for our previous conversations, radio silence. I'm just like, what? I
Yeah.
wasn't mean. I was just, no, because you taught me how to do it, and now you don't like that I did it. So,
Hey, we're all
I still
we're
don't
all a work in progress. We're all a work in progress. That's for sure. But I do want you this week. You all got a homework assignment, and I'm going to put it on the pay on our group too, our private group. But you need to really evaluate, and please do this, because if you don't practice what we're talking about in the real world, it's not it's not going to be of use to you. Just like today when Brian come in, I had to physically practice what I had been sitting here reading. So I want you all, if you have to take a note, take a pen, write it on your hand, come in, let us know about it. Intentionally connect this week with people. Okay, will y'all do that? Will you intentionally do it and be intentional about it? Slow down when you feel yourself being in a hurry, and just ask someone about themselves that's outside of the norm, what you would normally do. Will y'all do that? And then tell us about it, because I want to hear about it. And then next week, we're going to talk about, we're going to dig a little bit more into it. I'll give you all some assignments to teach on next week if you want to, if you're comfortable with that. So I don't have to do all the talking. And I do have a lot of questions. I meant to tell you too, before we get off here, for those of you who are still here, if you need that participant book, it's in the private group. Go to the files. Tracy, did you find it?
I didn't find it, but Jesse found it for me and is printing it off for me.
Okay, good. So, and if you don't have a printer, I just pull mine up and then just take notes. But anyway, so that's in there. The workbook, if you need that. But please, please, please.
Carlos, you got a book yet?
No, I think he doesn't have it yet, I don't think, but we'll make sure.
You
we've got
want?
all
I
that.
can bring this by and you can make copies.
he's off. He's not
Yeah,
on.
sorry about that. No, I'm if my I was muted. Okay. I was gonna say I have a lot of books. I don't have that one though.
Well, what I'm saying is I can bring it by and you can, we can print you off the chapter so you can be reading, keeping up with us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be awesome.
It's
I
really,
sure would appreciate that.
it's a good book. It really is. There's a lot of great stories in it and a lot of good information. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope that, do y'all feel like that this helps you, or is it just, to be able to have these conversations? I want you to be honest. If we need to kind of go in a different direction, I'd love to get your feedback on making sure that we're being able to use this time, where we're actually learning and being able to apply it. But you've got to apply what we're learning. Okay. So, and y'all tell me about it this week. So, all right. Well, God bless you all, and I'll see you in the morning. Psalms 24.
bet.
It's happening in the morning. All right, y'all. I love you guys. God bless you. Go connect with someone.
Who?
You.
Hmm.
All right. We're going to end this one. God bless you all. If you're on the live Bible study, Bible junkies, there's Daisy Lee. Let's see if we can end this. Hello, my other daughter from another mother, aka Net. Yay. There was Net. I'm going to end this one. Good night. God bless you, Miss Dee Dee. And everybody else. Who else is on there? God bless you.